I have just chaired a meeting of the Cabinet where we agreed that the government should call a general election to be held on the 8th of June.
After British Prime Minister Theresa May declared a snap election in April, Britain is heading back to the polls. But why did she call for one just 2 years after Britain's last general election? Snap elections are relatively rare in Britain, and this one was called for one main purpose: Brexit. In 2016, the Brits narrowly voted to leave the European Union in a referendum. This was largely seen as a rejection of the EU's mandatory free movement rules. However, leaving the EU, and by extension the European single market, also known as hard Brexit, will be one of the most complicated international negotiations in history. Regardless of the outcome, the decision will have major financial repercussions for Britain's economy. Theresa May claims she called the election to strengthen her hand in the exit negotiations by increasing her thin majority in the House of Commons. The other major issues are public services, such as the free-to-use National Health Service, education and social care. It currently owes £1.7 trillion in national debt and has been operating with an annual deficit for many years. There are two main parties in the United Kingdom: the Conservatives, also known as the Tories, and the Labour Party. The Conservative Party have been in government since 2010. Former Prime Minister David Cameron pledged to hold a referendum on membership of the EU in his 2015 manifesto. After failing to convince people to vote Remain, Cameron resigned, which led to Theresa May taking over as Prime Minister with the daunting task of managing Britain's controversial exit from the European Union. The Conservative manifesto sets out its aims to leave the EU in a hard Brexit and reduce immigration by ending the free movement of people. The Tories have also pledged to bring down the annual deficit through an austerity programme that includes heavily cutting public services. The Labour Party, the country's main opposition, led by veteran left-wing politician Jeremy Corbyn, has been mired with party infighting and low poll ratings, despite Labour's well-received anti-austerity manifesto. Labour have set out radical plans to borrow billions to invest in infrastructure and services in hope of driving economic growth. On the issue of Brexit, Corbyn's Labour policy, like the Tories, has set out plans to leave the European Union, the single market, and ending the free movement of people. The Scottish Nationalist Party were buoyed by a hugely successful 2015 election campaign, winning nearly all of Scotland's seats. Led by Nicola Sturgeon, the SNP have a broadly social democratic platform, strongly oppose Brexit and want to hold another referendum on Scottish independence from the United Kingdom, putting them at loggerheads with both Labour and the Conservatives. The Liberal Democrats are Britain's centrist party. After the electorate handed them a bruising defeat in 2015, following unhappiness with the coalition government, the Lib Dems appointed Tim Farron as leader. Under Farron, the Liberal Democrats have pledged to remain in the single market and have introduced other proposals such as the legalisation of cannabis, to no major improvement in the polls. Britain is a parliamentary democracy. This means that the party that wins the most seats in Parliament gets to form a government. The British Parliament contains 650 seats, one given to a politically impartial Speaker of the House and the others divided between the parties. Here is what the House of Commons looked like just before the Conservatives dissolved Parliament for the general election. The Conservative Party is still polling higher than Labour, and while Jeremy Corbyn has received some of the lowest popularity scores ever recorded for an opposition leader, Labour have been steadily closing the gap since the release of their manifesto. According to the polls, Labour have failed to gain on lost ground from the SNP and anti-EU former UKIP voters heading back to the Tories. And while a Labour coalition is possible, the Conservatives still look set to win the most seats, making hard Brexit and austerity the likeliest outcomes for Britain's foreseeable future.